Alrighty, so thank you everybody for attending. My name is Marquise. I'm going to be our tech support for the night. So if you see me in the chat, you can feel free to message me if you have a question you need to get to the Q&A, but maybe it's not working for you, or if you don't have the most up-to-date version of Zoom. We're going to be using a Q&A function, and so you should see it on your little bar at the bottom of your screen. You also have a chat function. Sometimes the chats are in a different spot depending on if you're using it on a computer or a phone or an iPad. Sometimes you'll have your own chat box, and other times it'll be those three little dots. So if you want to use a chat, feel free to do so. You can post questions in there, and we also take them in our Q&A section. And if you put it in the chat, we have staff here to forward them to the Q&A section so that our moderator, Tanisha, can uplift them. Yeah, so I'm going to pass it along to Melissa to just give us a really quick intro, and then we will jump right in.
Hey everyone, thanks for being here tonight. It is really important that people make informed decisions about their votes. And so we, as a nonprofit environmental organization and 501c3 organization, do not make endorsements, but we do participate in educating voters about the candidates that are making relevant decisions to the health of our environment. And so we are really excited to be here tonight. I am so grateful that the port candidates are here. So we have Don Meyer, the incumbent, we have Mary Bacon, and I just want to make sure that I get the last name right, Mario Rivera here tonight. And so thank you, candidates, for being here. And thank you, Tanisha Jumper, for moderating tonight. And I hope everyone enjoys this. Please participate via questions, and we're looking forward to learning more. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be with you tonight. My job is to ask questions and to make sure that we get through all the questions that we have and give each candidate the time to answer their questions. We have 3 candidates tonight. Last night we had 2 and we've made it right in time. So tonight I'm going to have to be a little bit tighter on time so we can get through all the questions. But I also want to encourage the audience to submit their questions throughout the program so that we can sort through them and get as many of those answered as well. We're going to start with some brief introductions and then head into questions, and then we'll start with the audience questions. I think it's really important, to Melissa's point about education, that the candidates really try to succinctly answer the questions as best as possible and to speak in plain English. Sometimes we get wonky or start getting really into policy, and for people trying to vote on the things that matter most to them, they just want to know, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? What are your priorities? So we're going to just have a conversation, try to get through as many questions as possible, and let the community get to know you and why they should vote for you. So with that, I want to welcome Mario Rivera, Mary Bacon, and Donald Meyer to turn on your cameras and join me. Hi. So again, I'm Tanisha Jumper. I am the Director of Media and Communications for the City of Tacoma. I'm obviously not working in that capacity today, but I am always kind of in the mind of, what community needs to hear, what they're listening for, and how sometimes we can talk at levels that sometimes people are like, that's not what I asked you. And so my job is to be their voice in this conversation. So if you do answer something, I need a little clarification, I might ask a follow-up question. But again, this is just a conversation to let the community know where you stand on some things and what you're most interested in. And so I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and just let the folks know who you are as a person. And we'll start with Mary.
Good evening, Tanisha, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. My name is Mary Bacon, and I'm a candidate for the Port of Tacoma Commissioner position number 4. In 2006, I graduated from the University of Washington, Tacoma with my degree in environmental science. And for the past 15 years, I've worked as an environmental toxicologist and health physicist in the Puget Sound. If elected to the commission, I will be bringing a perspective that is missing from our commission, and I will also be the first working scientist to hold a seat within our port. I've also been the president of a labor union, so I will always advocate for workers and well-paying jobs. Our port's economic and environmental development is an opportunity to promote growth in our community by increasing employment and new business opportunities as we become climate resilient. So my motivation to run for the board is that I appreciate the work that has been done, but there is a lot more work that needs to be done. And with an environmental scientist on the board, we'll be well on our way. So thank you.
Thank you. Don, would you like to answer? Would you like me to call you Donald or Don?
You can call me Don. That'd be just fine. You know,
Okay.
I'd like to keep it really simple. Well, thank you very much. And I just want to express a sincere thank you to Melissa and the staff of CHB and the board of directors and all the participants with us this evening. I agree with Melissa. This is an important topic and we want to make certain we get the right individuals in an office. My name is Don Meyer and I am seeking re-election. I've held this position for since 2010. Prior to that time, I was involved with the redevelopment and the initial redevelopment and cleanup of the Foss waterway. As the way I described it at that time, when I got involved, it was the largest septic tank I'd ever seen. And I will tell you, it was probably one of the most career-changing efforts on my behalf, as well as other individuals, to change something that impacts the spirit and image of a city. Prior to that time, I was also staff at the Port of Tacoma. During that time was when we had a substantial growth in terms of containerization. We pioneered the first on-dock rail facility that transfers containers from ships to rail car very quickly and very directly. I participated in the Puyallup land claim settlement. So the relationship with the Puyallup tribe has always been very important to me. And I also handled the phone calls when the federal government designated Commencement Bay as a Superfund site. That means heavily polluted, contaminated, and it just was a very negative thing from an economic development standpoint. So I've had a lot of experience on the waterfront. My dad was a Teamster working at a job in the Tide Flats. So I know the value of good paying jobs to families. And so I love the reference, economic engine of Pierce County is one of the references of the port, but we all know that a contemporary port is much more than that. It has to be about environmental leadership. It has to be about community engagement. And I'm hoping tonight that I can explain some of the things that we've done and are doing, because it's important to understand where we're trying to go as we try to decrease our carbon footprint, clean up our water, and really clean up our air for the benefit of all citizens of Pierce County and for a more of a regional focus as well. So I'm looking forward to tonight. I'm very motivated on environmental leadership and community engagement beyond the job conversation. So thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you so much. Mario, would you like to introduce yourself to the crowd?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mario Rivera. I am candidate for a position for the Port of Tacoma Commissioners. Kind of decided to run for this. Had somebody kind of ring my ear about some things, and they reached out to me and decided, why not me? So I decided, why not be a leader in our community? Not originally from Tacoma, but I've fallen in love with Tacoma 20 years ago, and left, came back, and I make this is my home. This is where my children are being raised, and this is where I feel that the environmental part of our area is crucial. I've seen a lot of growth, and I've also seen a lot of stagnation as well. So I figured, why not put my voice out there? Let me bring myself to the forefront and maybe lead ourselves into another era that we haven't seen before. My background, a little bit, I was a longshoreman for a short period of time, not long. Found out it's very hard work, and it's definitely not something for everyone. But it's definitely, like Don said, is an engine of Tacoma, and I definitely want to be part of it, and definitely feel that I think we're kind of overlooking the port on multiple levels as far as economic, environmental and education of our area to let everybody know what a longshoreman does, what the area, where the port is in our area, and how vital it is to our area. So I'm here to voice the voice. I'm the voice of the voiceless, as well as the people who are uneducated about what the port is and what it does. So here I am, and I hope to earn everyone's vote and consideration, if nothing else, for their vote. So that's who I am, and thanks for inviting me. I appreciate the reach out, and it definitely has gotten better over time. I'm a new guy to all this, so I'm very new, very green, you could say. Thank you, guys.
Nice. So all three of you mentioned a kind of why you're running for office, but can you tell us what are the key issues that you want to tackle, and what are the problems that you're hoping to solve as a port commissioner? And Mario, we're going to go ahead and start with you.
My problem is problems I'm thinking about solving and wanting to solve was some of the economic as well as education, as well as the care for the port. The environmental has always concerned me. I never really realized, and I've read history over the Port of Tacoma and the sawmills and everything that was down in the piers, and how much sawdust has been dumped into the bay, and watch some of the cleanup and some of the things that's going on. But I think some of what I believe some of the stuff that's going on now is not moving as quickly as it probably should be. As we've seen before, we've seen the 114-degree weather a few weeks ago. We've seen a lot of the water levels rising. And so we can't just think economics, can't think just education. We also have to think about what we're going to do here in a shorter period of time. We're talking about 5-10 years, and what we're going to do and move forward to make our waterways better than what they have been, and also be progressive, not wait until something happens and then do something about it. We have to be ahead of the game. In some cases, 10, 15 years ahead of the game as far as thought processes. And I think, not to say that it hasn't been happening, but I think it's a little slow going. I think sometimes a little bit of new blood, a little bit of different perspective on things will get that engine rolling and get things moving, maybe move a little bit faster than what they have been in the past.
Thank you. Mary, how about you?
So 5 years ago, the Paris Accord was ratified. 5 years ago, the city of Tacoma issued the Tacoma Climate Change Resilience Study. And currently, the city is actually taking the necessary steps to mitigate the effects that have been identified with climate change. Those similar efforts in the last 5 years and 6 years now have not been identified for the Port of Tacoma nor our tide flats. So if I'm elected Commissioner number 4, I will foment the creation of the Port of Tacoma Climate Change Action Strategy. The strategy's goals will address climate change, and the concurrent infrastructure development will be sustainable, inclusive, and equitable. The objectives will include lower emission development, prepare for and respond to climate-related impacts, support innovative solutions and sustainable technologies. Our long-term outcomes will establish lower emissions, increased resilience to climate change, and the promotion of economic development. The Port of Tacoma has existed for over a century, and with my leadership experience and foresight, I intend to take our port into the next century. But we need an environmental scientist, and we need a scientist to help us make these decisions in the port, because at present, when I looked at the port's organizational chart, we don't have a director of air quality. We don't have a director of water quality. The Northwest Seaport Alliance does. So this is what we're lacking in the Port of Tacoma, and that is a vacuum I intend to occupy. Thank you.
Thank you. Don.
Thank you for the question. I kind of see maybe 3 things that I'd like to talk about in response to the issues you talked about. And the first is, we're in a very competitive situation with regards to maritime cargo. Canada has really been very aggressive at capturing a lot of the discretionary cargo that normally goes into Chicago and the Ohio Valley. So we've got to make certain we right size our terminals for the larger vessels and to keep competitive, because if we don't have good paying jobs in the tide flats and throughout the port to support not only the immediate jobs for our longshore group, but also the businesses that depend upon the volume of business moving through the port of Tacoma, we lose. So the competitive situation we find ourselves in, and the need to be a strong advocate for having the right kind of facilities is the first thing. The second thing that I think is a major issue in our community, and it's a discussion that's going on right now, is ensuring that we have the ability to retain as the port and businesses in the tide flats as being competitive. I worry about the fact that we need buffers, which I know is a part of the conversation going on in terms of land use planning, but those are the sorts of things that I think are key issues, because long-term, we're going to end up being limited in terms of our operations. So I trace it to land use, zoning issues, to ensure that we can be competitive, but we can operate on a 24/7 basis. The third thing is, without a question, is climate change. And we've subscribed to the goal of zero emissions by 2050. But the reality is that we're obviously not waiting. We're out with our Northwest Clean Air Strategy, including the Port of Tacoma Air Strategy, for public input. This is a strategy that's over 10 years old and has been updated numerous times. So we're in the process of updating that strategy to address the climate change issues that we know we need to address, whether it's water, sea level rise, or simply creating fish habitat. That's the advocacy I have, 134 acres for fish habitat. And people talk a lot about climate change, but I think it's also important that we be very sensitive to the resources that we have in it flowing through Commencement Bay. So those are the three things. But one other item, when I talk about community connections, that I would like to add to my three, really make a fourth, and that is the role of a contemporary port, I think, has to be more engaging relative to workforce training, the idea of supporting underrepresented groups, not only through workforce training, but the idea of the innovative incubator that's located on the Foss Waterway for individuals that want to go into business that otherwise may not have that opportunity. So I see that when I say community connections, I see the ability for underrepresented groups to have educational opportunities, including an academic academy, a high school academy in our K-12 system, including one that might be at the Pierce County Skills Center. So I see a whole array from a contemporary port standpoint. It's not just about the environment. It's about the opportunity to have a good paying job. That's what this is really about at the end of the day. Talk about climate fairness. Talk about fairness as, for underrepresented groups. That's what we should be talking about. That to me is important.
Well, I think it's important because we're going to get to all of that tonight. So now that we've got to know you, I want to say hi to all the people on Facebook. If you have a question on Facebook and you put it in the Q&A, it will get to me as well. So you don't have to wait till the audience Q&A portion to submit your question. You can submit your question now, but invite you to do that. Let's jump into the big questions. In the fall of 2019, a landmark report from the United Nations Scientific Panel on Climate Change described a far more dire picture of near-term consequences of climate change than previously thought, and said that avoiding the damage requires us to reduce global climate emissions by nearly 50% by 2030, just 8.5 years from now. This requires a worldwide economic transition at a speed and scale that has no documented historic precedent. The closest model scientists pointed to was the mobilization efforts in the US during World War II. What is the port's role in addressing the climate crisis? And what are you going to do, or what would you do if elected to reduce global greenhouse emissions for Tacoma? And Don, we're going to start with you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very important question. And boy, 2030 is not very far away, my friends. what am I going to do about it? What's my advocacy on it? The fact of the matter is that in order for us to get even close to that, we're going to have to electrify a lot of what we do in order to reduce carbon. And when I say electrification, we're on our way for the second shore power facility at the Port of Tacoma. What that means is when the ship comes into berth, it can actually plug into electricity instead of burning bunker fuel or other types of fuels. So, and by the way, by 2030, we should have all of our terminals with shore power. Okay, so that's the first step. The second step is obviously we've started the electrification in one of our rail yards of cargo handling equipment. And I would expect, I don't think we're going to get to 100% by 2030 because I don't think that's commercially viable, but I would anticipate we'd be 80% on cargo handling equipment to be electrified. And then I think the easiest one on this conversation is going to be around our own fleet, because Ford Motor Company, I read an article just recently that said by 2030, they thought 40% of their production would be electric vehicles. Wow. That's a game changer, my friends. And so I'm enthused by that. But I want to take it to buildings, because one of the things that we're looking at is a maritime center on the Foss Waterway on the east side of it. And I want to model that maritime center off of the Catalyst building that was recently built in Spokane. And that is zero carbon emissions from the operation of the building. That's where I want to go. I think it's possible. Can we make that 50% reduction by 2030? That's a real stretch goal, but we all have to try. And I'm committed to trying and making certain that happen to the best of my ability.
All right, thank you. Mario. And please let me know if you need me to repeat the question.
Yeah, let me repeat the question. I know it's kind of a couple of questions in there.
I'll just get to the question part. Hopefully you remember the commentary part, but what is the port's role in addressing the climate crisis? And what would you do if elected to reduce global greenhouse emissions for Tacoma? Oh, you're muted.
I think the port's role is critical, especially since it's one of the main engines of Tacoma. Not to say, like I said before, it's not to say that it hasn't been happening. I think it needs to be happening, and we need to figure out ways to move it faster than what it has been happening, along with other things that we need to do. I believe that the best way to do it, like Don said, the shore power, I believe we can bring wind power in. I believe we can bring solar power in. There's avenues and places that we can do that offshore, not necessarily in the port, but somewhere near the port to bring power into the facilities and start using more of these alternative technologies that we have that are accessible. We have people that are in our, within hand touch with technology that for what I can see, we're not probably utilizing as probably much as we should be. So I think that with that coming in and having with something, I think 10 years is a great goal, but I think it's something that we need to push ourselves and see how fast we can do it. Shore power in 10 years, I'm kind of wondering why it's been taking so long. And this is one of the reasons why I'm running, because I'm like, I don't understand what's going on and why it's going and why is it moving at the rate that it is. Can we do something about it? Can we figure out what's happening with it? Sure we can. I think that's what some of the community outreach that we need to have, as far as being more out there and letting us know and say, hey, this is what's going on. We need more finances. Do we need to contact senators, Congress people to get more money into our port to make this something happen a little bit sooner than 10 years from now? At this point, it's like I said before, with the whole 114-degree weather change, that unheard of. I've never seen that in my life, and it's record setting. So at this point, I think that was kind of ringing the alarm that 10 years is not fast enough. We need to be moving within 5. And I think it's possible. And I know it has to do with, a lot of it has to do with money and probably pushing people who don't want to be pushed and used to things that are going the same way it's been going. I have no problem knocking on doors. I have no problem talking to people. I have no problem making people uncomfortable in order to make something happen. And yes, it's definitely a financial scenario where we have to think about our clientele that comes to the port and how is that going to affect them. But that's the whole point of making money, is to be able to utilize it in the right places, not necessarily utilize it and put in their own pockets. Sometimes it hurts a little bit to be in business, and you have to make those sacrifices and force businesses to make those sacrifices for the greater good. So I think that's part of the problem. And I think that we could definitely do that. And that's not just me, myself, it's also my constituent, which would be my constituents out there, who would come out here and tell me and say, hey, this is what we want. Okay, well, let me get at it. Let me roll my sleeves up and let's go out here and see what can need to be done. And then I come back to constituents and say, this is what's going on. I don't think I haven't seen that. I haven't really witnessed that. I haven't heard that. So I'm thinking my thought process is, why not? No fault to anyone. I understand there's a lot of things that go on out there that get dragged out and gets kind of lost in the wave of everything. But we have to remember, it's not just us as being candidates or being the person in charge at that particular time. It's all of us. And we all have to work as a community to make our port the best port there is on the West Coast, and hopefully in the United States. And I think we have the opportunity to do that, and with the forethought of moving forward at a quicker pace, as well as, turning on some things that people just don't want to change. People don't want to do because of their own personal financial states, or because they don't want to do it because it's easier just to do it that way. So with that said, I'm here to kind of give the proverbial punch in the nose and say, hey, this is no more time to play. We've drug our feet long enough. It's time to make things happen, make a move a little bit faster than what they have been.
I agree. Thank you. Mary.
Thank you. So what the port can do to reduce greenhouse gases has already been mentioned today with the expansion of shore power. But what should be noted is that we should have had shore power 5 years ago. We're talking about expanding it in 2021. The port agreed in 2016 that we would abide by the Paris Accord. So why 5 years later has it taken us this long to go to shore power? I had the privilege to work for the United States Navy for 7 years, and I can assure you that all of their nuclear powered carriers are on shore power. So why in 2021 are we finally catching up with the US Navy? That's a little bit embarrassing when we could be reducing our greenhouse gas emissions with vessels at berth by 15% if we were at shore power. So if I were commissioner, I would make sure that we had shore power within 2 years, because we have the ability, we have the unions, we have the workers to create this infrastructure and definitely improve it. And the other thing that I would like to see at the port is, with the construction of our port-owned buildings, is that we need to be pursuing and actively engaging in the leadership in energy and environmental design compliance. We need to be LEED compliant in every building that we're constructing. And those are the two big things that I would do as port commissioner: shore power, LEED compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to make sure we can get through all the questions. So I'm going to ask the candidates to try to keep your answers to about 2 minutes, or under 2 minutes if possible, so we can make sure we can get to all of these. For years, frack gas, as known as liquid natural gas, was touted as a bridge fuel, because even though it is a fossil fuel, the thought was that it was less harmful than burning bunker fuel. Now we know the full impact of natural gas on environment and public health, and know that fossil fuels must be phased out of our energy portfolios. What do you see as the port's role in transitioning off the high carbon intensity fuels like fracked gas and diesel in maritime shipping and transportation industries? And I'm going to start with Mary.
So thank you. And we recognize that frack gas is a transitional fuel. So there's so many opportunities for carbon neutral fuels that are being investigated right now. Today, I was looking at the Pacific National Northwest Laboratories at their biofuels department. And these are opportunities where, instead of having that work done in SQUIM, we could support this infrastructure in a potential brownfields property down in the port, and we could be creating our own biofuels. So we have an opportunity to innovate in this department. And instead of sitting and waiting for another entity to bring us the idea, with the University of Washington, a stone's throw from the waterfront, we should be at the forefront of the biofuels and not waiting for the solution to be delivered to us. So that's what I think, Tanisha, is that we need to be innovators and pioneers in the biofuels industry and not wait for a solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Don, your thoughts on this?
Thank you. I see the port's role as having numerous pieces to it. First of all, I do believe LNG is a transition fuel without any question. And the reason why LNG is being looked at for the shipping lines is because it actually meets or exceeds the regulatory requirement now for vessels required to burn 1% low sulfur fuel. So LNG looks like a desirable alternative. So that's that. The second piece is that I think the port's role, if you really look at the overall pollution from ocean going vessels, it's huge. So I support the industry's effort by Maersk Line looking at the production of a commercially viable carbon-free emission vessel. And their goal is to get that completed and in service by 2030. I support that. I also support the fact that the IMO, which is the regulatory authority over the shipping industry, they need to tighten their standards. It's as simple as that. And burning 1% low sulfur fuel is just unacceptable to me. And so that's where I'm at. So I see the port's role as being being practical about supporting the industry's efforts to get to carbon neutral on powering vessels. I also think we should be promoting a role to get more aggressive at the policy level through the International Maritime Organization. So that's what I see. LNG is a transition fuel. That's the way my take on it is.
Okay, thank you. Mario?
I would have to agree with both the candidates on some of the things that you guys said. It definitely is important that we move forward with moving a little bit faster and find something outside of fossil fuels. Just cut and dry. There's nothing else to say about that. I think we have the opportunity to move things forward a little bit better than what we have been, and make sure that we have the capability of doing it in a way that's not going to affect anyone. But unfortunately, like Don said, we have to run up the pipeline and get the maritime to put more restrictions in it. Why not? Why hasn't it been done? Why aren't we doing it? Like I said before, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to rattle some people who just are used to the same things that we've been doing for the last 30, 40 years. And it's understandable. It's comfortable, it's easy. But as Americans and as being Washingtonians, we're used to being uncomfortable. We have to be uncomfortable. That's the only thing that's gonna make anything change. That's the only way we change, period. If you are too comfortable, there's something wrong. So we have to move to make things a little bit more uncomfortable. And then it starts, after a while, you start getting comfortable and understand the use to seeing the change. Just like going through and looking at the I-5 corridor and all the stuff going on down there. Over time, it was uncomfortable, but as things move on and progress, it got comfortable again. So we just have to make sure that we don't get set in a realm of comfort because it's the easy thing to do, because it hasn't been playing out like even Mary said. We've been waiting for all this stuff to happen and it hasn't been happening. Why? What's the problem? Is it because it's comfortable, or is it because of finances? Can't have both. We gotta play both sides. You can't play both sides of the fence. And I think it's one of those times that we need to really be progressive and be at the forefront of everything. And like Mary said, why not? Why aren't we bringing this stuff to our port? Why aren't we being the forefront of all this? It's uncanny to me that we were still kind of dilly-dallying around trying to figure out what should we do next, or why are we not doing this? So that's just my thought.
Thank you. All right, As part of the port's work, it regularly engages with other governments, like the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, who traditional fishing and gathering grounds have been in the tide flats since time immemorial. Unfortunately, industrial activities in the port have come in direct conflict with the traditional rights of tribal members of land and fish, members to the land and fish of this area. As a port commissioner, you can help foster better relationships between the port and the frontline communities, especially the tribe. What skills and experience do you have working with the frontline communities? And if elected, what will you do to uplift the port's relationship with the tribe? Don, as the incumbent, I'm going to let you answer that question first.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think this is a question that I've received through every forum I think I've attended so far. It's an important question because when you read what's in the newspaper, given the controversy over the LNG, it looks like we're at loggerheads and we're not working together on anything. I'm not even hardly talking. The reality is the world and the recognition I've given the tribe is, having been a part of the tribal settlement agreement, I see the role and relationship with the tribe as having two pieces that I'm going to be an advocate for and have been an advocate for. The first is doing a joint venture on a major piece of property on the Blair Waterway. And we almost had a deal right after the Puyallup land claim settlement, because I was staff at the port at that time, and almost had a maritime customer sign up, but unfortunately it didn't quite work out for a variety of reasons. So I'm still an advocate for doing a joint venture. In fact, we have a customer that's under consideration looking at that piece of land. I'm an advocate for sharing our customer contacts in the maritime industry with them. If there's one thing that people should be aware of given this pandemic, is diversify your revenues, okay? This is one way the tribe can do that instead of all gaming and a few other things. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that in all the conversations I've had with a lot of the leadership, and particularly with Chairman Starrode, it's about fish. I am an advocate for creating 134 acres of fish habitat. That to me is one of the most symbolic things for the tribe, but it's also the right thing to do as a public entity. You're right, we've got a terrible historical past, but I'm proud of the fact that I probably have done more cleanups on different sites throughout the tide flats than I suspect. I don't know of anybody that would be ahead of me in that category. But I think fundamentally is looking at the resources and respecting the fact that fish is a key component of their cultural activities. The third thing, it helps when you get a new person that comes in, and we got a new executive director who is establishing, I think, a better relationship with the tribe. We got to get better at it. But the thing that's really destroyed that relationship and put a real kink in it is the debate over LNG. Make no bones about it. I'm just acknowledging it, but I'm not gonna stop trying to work on it. That's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Don. Mario, your thoughts on how what skills and experiences you have that would help you work with frontline communities, and if elected, what would you do to uplift the port's relationship with the tribe?
I've worked with everybody from being a business owner, being out in the community, working with all kinds of people throughout my life. I have a really diverse amount of things that I've done throughout my life, and it's constantly in the public eye and constantly talking to people. So I think what I bring to is the openness and willing to listen. I think people have a thought process of, I'm going to listen, but in the back of their head, they already have a preconceived idea of what they want to happen in this whatever particular conversation. So it's not really listening. It's all about how can they guide a way in order to convince that person that they're speaking to side with what they want to do. I actually listen. I'm listening to people and I want to hear what they have to say. I don't know everything. As old as I am, I have a lot more I want to know and a lot more I want to learn. So I'm willing to listen and see how I can benefit the tribe. The tribe is one of the most important things in our area. That's what makes us who we are. That's what makes this area who it is. is the tribe. And without including them and not showing them and bringing them into it, it's almost like a slap in the face. And in some cases, we have to bend their way to satisfy them because it's only right. It's their land. They were here before we were here. Why would we not accept some of the things they want, as long as it's not adversely affecting anything in our facilities or anything that's going to be damaging? Why not? You know, I mean, the fishery, the hatcheries, great idea, is perfect, but when is it going to happen? Time waits for no one. And that's where we all at right now. And this is what I was stressing earlier. You know, 5-10 years, that's great. You know, how many generations of the Puyallup tribe is going to go by before something happens? So my thought process is this: how can we expedite this? How can we get this to be more satisfactory for not them, but as far as what's going to be satisfactory for our community, others in our community, especially our community, since our community is diversifying so much in the last 10 years. I've been here for over 20 years now. And just from the time I've gotten here to this time, it's a lot different and it's growing fast. So I want to say that we definitely have to work with them and try to satisfy them as much as we can and make sure that they're feeling no reservations about working with us and making sure that we can bring ourselves together and get their opinions and see what's going on with them and understand what's vital and crucial for them and going towards the future.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mary, do you need me to repeat the question or you got it?
I think I have it. Thank you.
Okay.
So the work that I've done with frontline communities was I was the representative for the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, local number 12. I was the president of a union during a pandemic. I've made sure that our workers were able to work safely and securely and confidently in the environments that they have been in. I have worked in a controlled industrial area. I have worked in areas with 24/7 operations. So I understand what hard work means, and I understand the level of danger in the environments in these where our workers are at. So with that, I take that to our port, where we're not looking at our future dangers for our workers at the port. You know, if we don't address climate change, if we don't make any recognition of it, we're talking about in 30 years, seawater inundation of 1.5 feet. In 70 years, 4.5 feet. Well, it's not going to be us down there on the waterfront. It's going to be our friends, our coworkers, our peers. So that's what I intend to take, is to make sure that worker safety is represented. I have a couple issues about worker safety, but this isn't the place or time. But to answer your question, with the tribe, 47 years ago, the Honorable Bolt issued his ruling and stated that we should work to improve communications between Indians and non-Indians. And I affirm the Bolt decision. And I will work diligently and very sincerely, not for consultation, but informed consent. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions before we get to the audience questions, and I see some of them, they're very good, so I want to hurry up and get to them. So I'm going to ask you to try to keep your answers down to a minute for these next two questions so we can jump into the questions. So my next question is, what was one of the hardest leadership challenges you faced, and what lesson did you learn from it? And we're going to start with you, Mario.
Wow. I face hard leadership situations every day. I have a family. I'm a head of household. You know, so dealing with children, dealing with people on a daily basis, it's a hard situation. I would have to say the hardest would be making a decision to knowing that one time I had my own franchise business, and I had to make a decision whether to close it and go off on my own or remain and fight through it. I decided to close it and go on and do my own thing because I just couldn't put myself in that box. I couldn't limit myself, and understood that limiting myself in anything is not good for me and it's not good for anyone around me. So I had to make the decision and make sure that everything was good on that front, and understand that it was actually more beneficial for my customers, because I've seen people all the time that were having issues that unfortunately the franchise that I was in kept my hands tied and limited me from helping them because they didn't want to be involved in that. So unfortunately, I had to kind of rip off the Band-Aid and say, yeah, I'm not going to do this any longer, and decided I'm going to go ahead and do this on my own and do my own thing. So that was definitely a hard decision for me. But life is full of hard decisions every day of the week, and some are more critical than others. So with my thought process, I'm going to be always ready for those hard decisions and always constantly thinking and trying to fine tune and get better. I make mistakes, I own them, I accept them, and I'm trying to better them. So I'm constantly trying to be ever evolving as a father, as a leader in the community, and understand that I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn as much as I can while I'm here.
Thank you. Mary.
Thank you. A difficult leadership moment was 14 months ago for me. I actually had to send a text message to a friend stationed in Yokosuka, Japan, and I said, hey man, be careful. I think there's something going around the world and I need you to wash your hands. So that was 14 months ago. With that, I helped to secure the health and safety of over 15,000 employees on the West Coast's largest public shipyard by enacting health and safety measures that hadn't been taken in any other large capacity. For example, the introduction of face masks, temperature checks prior to entry to work, health screenings, and we had processes in place if any of those didn't come to fruition. So that was a difficult leadership decision, because trying to convince individuals that something is real when you don't have it on paper or you can't show them on a microscope what you're dealing with, extremely difficult, very trying. I was challenged every day on it. And what I finally had to share was, what side of history do you want to be on? Because I'm not going to take anyone's health for granted, and I will never place anything above worker safety. So that was an extremely difficult leadership decision, was staying the course and making sure that we took all of the protective measures to make sure. And I can assure you, absolutely no one died at the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard from COVID-19. And that is not the case for many of the industries around here. So thank you.
Thank you. And Dawn.
My biggest leadership challenge was the day that I got hired to become the executive director of the Fossil Waterway Development Authority and the initial cleanup of that waterway. And when I walked down the shore, and I was thinking, what did I just do? And what am I really going to do? And the reality of it is that I got lucky, because I quickly realized that I needed support from the community. In addition to Norm Dix, the two partners that really helped me, and the way I dealt with it, was the Citizens for Healthy Bay and the Department of Ecology, Marv Coleman. And that's how I dealt with it, was involving people and being advocates for the cleanup and being advocates for the redevelopment. And that partnership, I would like to replicate when we talk about the cleanup of OxyChem, because it was a partnership that we all knew the roles that we had to play. And I remember the first time I suggested to investors who were developers that we should include these people in our negotiation process, so you know what you're getting into, because these sites were being remediated. We call them cleanups, but the fact is they still have contamination on them, and they need to have safeguards on them. So when we were trying to entice private investors on these sites, we needed to make certain we had an honest conversation. So that's how I dealt with it. But I will tell you, it was the biggest challenge I've ever had in my career.
So what what is your vision for the port in 20 years? Talk us through how your values as a person or a community leader shape that vision. And let's start with Dawn on this one.
Thank you. My vision of the Port of Tacoma is modern facilities and good policies in place that protect the port container element, which is state law. I view the port being a supporter for green industries. One of the things that I want to be an advocate for is more manufacturing, whether it's the ability to do what they're doing in New Jersey with the wind port. And Mario made some references to that sort of a concept. I want to see more manufacturing. I want to see more diversity. I don't think we should just be a container port. We need diversity. And my advocacy is Maritime Center. I would even like to activate the Martineck shipbuilding facility, because we've had some really good luck recently in getting a tenant in shipbuilding. So I think the idea of diversity, the idea of manufacturing to increase the employment activity on every acre in the tide flats is an objective that I have. And I see that vision very, very important. The other thing that I see is infrastructure. I'm a supporter of completion of 167 and the connection of Canyon Road into the Fife area as a corridor into Frederickson. But the reality is, I also want to see a better management of traffic flows, the application of technology when we talk about infrastructure. I want to see just a better way to be a good community partner. And I think truck traffic is a big issue for us. I don't want to see trucks stacked up on 509. We got to be better at managing that. So I want to see modern facilities. I want to see more green kinds of activities. I want to see the ability to put manufacturing as a central part of our objective. And that to me is an important vision of the Port of Tacoma. Thank you. I'm limiting my time, okay?
Okay, I appreciate it. Let's go with Mary.
Thank you. So in 20 years, I can see less traffic on the road, because what the Port of Tacoma has become is a destination where people aren't driving to Seattle for work anymore. That now we're looking at taking public transit to get to our workplaces down on the tide flats. That's what I'd like to see in 20 years. We don't have the commuters, and that we've got this reduction in truck traffic because we've built this infrastructure and that's finally going to be in place. In 20 years, I see the ability to harvest shellfish from Commencement Bay instead of being warned that thou shalt not consume this. In 20 years, I see all of our vessels are on shore power and not emitting diesel particulates into the air. In 20 years, I see a climate resilient port that is prepared for the various unforeseen changes that are going to happen that will be a result of increased temperatures and increased sea level. So I see a robust, healthy port, and that is something that I will gladly help lead us to. So thank you.
Thank you. Mario.
20 years. It's actually going to happen faster than you know. So, 20 years, my vision is very symbolic with Mary's. I definitely would love to see our infrastructure be a lot stronger. The more of green stuff going on, manufacturing, like Don was saying. I think we have the capability of doing a lot more than what we have been doing. I think I can definitely see the port eliminating a lot of the foot traffic, as far as, I should say, car traffic, and hopefully a lot of the container, not necessarily container, but truck traffic. I think we are kind of at this cusp of which way to go. So within 20 years, I think we can definitely, I think there's a way to create a better on and off the freeways with the trucks as well as transportation. public transportation, there's no reason why. A lot of it's just being caught up in with financial stuff instead of just coming with a better viewpoint on what we're going to do for the future. So I definitely see a lot of that. I think the education for our area and letting people know what the port is all about is definitely going to be a big thing. Like Don said, bringing in, high schoolers and teaching them what the port is all about, educating them, especially our communities of color, for viable diverseness in the port, bringing in financial well-being to our community as well as other communities in our outlying areas. So I think in 20 years, I definitely see a lot more going on that's going to be in a much positive direction. Thanks.
Thank you. So we've got a lot of questions and we have about 30 minutes to get through the audience questions. So again, try to keep your answers kind of brief and to the point so that we can get through as many of these as possible because people have been waiting for a minute to ask them. So we are fighting to pass a local Green New Deal to ensure Tacoma has a plan for a just transition out of the extractive fossil fuel economy. As a port commissioner, would you support a local Green New Deal resolution? Sorry, let's start with Mary.
Thank you. I would, and I would also be very interested in incorporating it into the Port of Tacoma's climate change action strategy and to see what we can have between both of them so that we're all marching towards the same goal.
Thank you. Mario?
I would have to concur with Mary on that. That's not a whole lot for me to disagree with that. You would be an idiot not to agree with the New Deal, especially with the way our climate is changing. So, hey, I concur.
All right, thank you. Don?
I concur with the idea that with the objective to make us more sensitive to climate change, that we need additional resources. One of the problems we have is the transition into new way of doing business. And one of the things that all public entities face this issue, let's not kid ourselves, is resources. So the idea that we're clear about what we want to accomplish, I support that, okay? Not a doubt, but I don't want to mislead people relative to the cost of doing that. And that's one of the things that has really slowed us down is where do we get the resources to make certain that when we tell our citizens we're going in this direction, that we can basically back it up with a game plan and a reasonable game plan, because my credibility is on the line when I make statements about, yeah, I'll do this and yeah, I'll do that. That's what gives politicians a bad name. They're just going to tell you something and they know damn well you can't accomplish it. What I'm interested in is being serious about your outcomes and then finding the resources, whether it's federal, state, local, or whatever, to match that. That to me is being responsible when we say we're going to support something.
Thanks, Don. Everybody answered that question. Okay, sorry, lost my. There's some good questions in here, but I want to kind of follow up on that question and ask, what does a just transition look like to you? For reference, just transition refers to the principle, policies, and practices that protects frontline workers and fence line communities while mobilizing the community to transform from an economy based on extracting natural resources and heavy polluting industries to one that is regenerative and meets environmental and public health goals. So kind of on top of the question that we just asked, what is it that you really see yourself? How do you envision that? And so let's start with Mario on this one.
How I see myself envision as far as trying to understand the question. Sorry.
What does a just transition look like? I mean, you guys were just talking about kind of the holding these two things at the same time. We've got to make these good changes, but we also have people who are dependent and industries that are dependent on this work. And what does a transition that kind of holds both of those things at the same time? What does that look like to you?
I think it looks like to me definitely a realistic viewpoint of what's going to be the after effects of what's going to go on. You can't make a decision and not see what's going to happen in the future. We have to look at it, what's going to be the effects. And unfortunately, there's multiple avenues that we can travel on things. So we have to really look at it and see and analyze how is this going to affect if we go this way, or how is it going to affect if we go that way. So we have to push forward and make a decision as to, okay, we understand that if we go down this line, we're going to lose jobs, or we're going to lose business. So we're going to have to say, okay, we're going to have some sort of consensus. Also, we have to take in a climate change as well as other things inside there. And we have to, this is about relationship building with inside our communities, as well as with inside our people that we are working with every day with inside the businesses and stuff. So we have to find out where can we find this happy medium to where we can understand them. Look, we're serious about fixing things in our port, but we're also serious about protecting our port as well as that, and come to some sort of happy medium. And with me, I'm usually the person in every job I've ever had and all business I've had, I'm always the one that cleans up all the mess. I'm the one that people always hands, that lady's been really difficult. If you go deal with her, sure, no problem. I have no problem. I'm used to this. This is what I've done all my whole life, is cleaning up messes. So and being able to work with people and make people understand that it's for the greater good, and it's not just for me. It's not just for us. It's for everyone to make sure that we're good. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Dawn, what does a just transition look like to you?
This is an extremely relevant question given the debate currently in our community with sub-area interim regs. And unfortunately, the debate as I see it is that it oftentimes, I think, is characterized as business wins, environment loses, or vice versa. My advocacy is I don't accept that model as being acceptable. What I accept is that if you look at our fossil fuel tank farms or the refinery, what I accept is the fact that we've got to figure out a way to transition those facilities capable of handling renewable and biofuels, because we have a state mandate that says 10% and hopefully getting us to 20%. So where are we going to do that at? So I think, so far the debate is kind of like, well, we're going to stop any improvements by any of these facilities, when I would be an advocate for saying, wait a minute, focus on renewables and bios. And if that's a policy mandate that we have, let's become a way to take that existing workforce and transition it over here into this area, rather than saying, sorry, you got a nice union job, but you're out of a job tomorrow. I don't accept that. That is unacceptable to me. I think we've got to have policies that are aimed at what outcome do we want, and then find a way to transition existing businesses. Because I've been in the economic development game long enough to know the number one priority you want to really think hard about is keep existing businesses and allow them to grow and be relevant.
Thanks, Dawn. Mary.
Feel a just transition for our Port of Tacoma absolutely must include increased diversity and representation at the port. So one of the things that I would be very interested in pursuing as a port commissioner would be the inclusion of women in minority business enterprise agreements that we have with businesses within Pierce County. The other more just transition I can also see is community workforce agreements for our port public works projects, so that we are employing our residents and we're not bidding it out to the lowest bidder. So that's what I see as creating opportunities for our residents, and instead of pricing them out. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to the audience questions. What markets has the Port of Tacoma either not entered or not fully taken advantage of that could help spur job density and a green economy at the same time? Mary, let's start with you.
So my background is science, so I'm going to be just all on board on anything that's research or innovation related. So I'm going to be a big proponent of mycological remediation, so that we're talking about, instead of just taking sediment and disposing of it upland or out in the water, we're actually going to break down those polyaromatic hydrocarbons that are in there, and we're actually going to make that clean, which is no process that we've ever been able to create yet, but we know that mushrooms can do it. So that's an opportunity I can see where we could establish remediation for historical sites within our own backyard. I see aquaculture as being an opportunity that we could take advantage of. I see the ability, like eelgrass restoration, if we could have laboratories where we could grow and foster eelgrass. Eelgrass is a 50% carbon sequestration for a marine plant. So if we were able to establish these areas, and even if they didn't work, at least we tried. And that's what we have to do, is we have to take every idea and try. So that's where I see the port going. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to have you come back to tell us what polycarb is, something that you said. It was very interesting, but I have no idea what it is. Let's go with Dawn.
Thank you. I believe that the market that the port has to focus in on is anything that pertains to manufacturing, particularly in the green economy. And to me, I made a reference earlier to a port in New Jersey that is being stood up for the wind industry. And today we actually handle, I think, some small components associated with the wind industry in terms of power industry. And I believe, why shouldn't we be looking at the fact that maybe we can manufacture these components right here? We have vacant land in the tide flats on the Heidelberg Waterway as an example. My goodness, why aren't we looking at that? And I'm an advocate for that. And the fact of the matter is that that's a new emerging market. The question is, can you really play in it, and can you get the right players? So if I'm interested in manufacturing, I'm just giving you one example of things that I would like to look at. But I think we've been a good winner on boat manufacturing. That to me is a good diversity. So I'm an advocate for water dependent kinds of uses that maintains a working waterfront for our community. And I think that's vitally, vitally important, because I see too many things where people would want to do other things than what I consider to be water dependent uses. So that's where I'm at. That's the short version.
All right, thank you. Mario? You're still muted.
God.
It's all right.
Usually just having conversations.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question again? Sorry. I was near...
What's the markets that the port is neither not entered or not fully taken advantage of that could spur job density and a green economy at the same time?
I would say definitely with the manufacturing. I think there's a possibility. I've seen research out there about hydroelectric. There's things out there that we can definitely be looking into towards the future. This is what I was saying before about us. We need to be not one step, but 3, 4, maybe 6 steps ahead of everybody else, and really looking for innovation as far as cleaning up the area, as far as making sure we tried everything, like Mary said, everything that out there, and see what works. The hesitation and the scaredness of doing things. You don't have to spend a lot of money to start a small, a test site to see what's going to happen. I think it's imperative that we look into the hydroelectric, the other manufacturing of other manufacturers in the green facilities. Why not? We have the space, we have the room, we have the people, we have the technology. So why are we dragging our feet? Yeah. So that's my question for that. So, but I think that's one of those things that needs to be really looked into and taken care of as soon as possible. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Thank you. So we have about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to try to do some speed round. Do you support regulations limiting high impact uses like coal terminals, fossil fuels, chemical uses, smelters, and quarries as being developed by the city of Tacoma? And if so, what is the port's role in these uses? And let's start with Dawn.
The port recently, well, I shouldn't say recently, we supported the idea that we wouldn't allow export of any fossil fuels off of port lands. When I became a port commissioner, I was horrified at the fact that we were being considered as an alternative for a coal export facility, and we purposely said no. We turned that down. I think when I think about the issue of high impact, one of the things that I did an op-ed article on is the fact that I didn't like on Marine View Drive, where it was being proposed to mine a gravel, and then it was zoned for residential units close to Marine View Drive. That is exactly what we should stay away from, as far as I'm concerned. That whole area has to be a buffer between residential and industrial. And if we don't aggressively pursue that, I think it'll be a long-term mistake, and we won't have to worry about 20 years from now. We'll be looking at a port that lost its market share because people went elsewhere because they could operate 24/7. So that's kind of my take.
Okay, thank you. Mario.
Okay. I hit that click, unmute. Sorry, I listening to, I got wrapped in thinking things about what he said. Sorry, say it again.
Do you support regulations limiting
yeah.
high impact uses? Yeah. Do you want me to finish the question?
Okay, no, you're fine. I just had to remind because I was interested in what he was saying. Yes, I definitely do. I think it's, once again, ripping the Band-Aid off. We don't want to do it because it hurts so bad, but we don't have a choice. And it's one of those things that it's necessary. It's time. We have the technology. We have the capability. We just choose not to do it because it's not easy. And nothing in life has ever been easy. So we just have to rip the Band-Aid off. And I think the regulations, I cried, almost cried when Inslee said, hey, 2030, we're going to now have fossil fuel vehicles sold in Washington. I was like, oh, that hurts. But it's necessary. It has to happen. This is not something that we have a choice any longer. We had a choice 30 years ago. We had a choice 50 years ago. We're getting to a point where the choice is no longer. It has to be done. So as bad as it hurts, we have to go and do put the regulations out there to make things happen the way they should happen. So we have a nice long life. Our world is safe. Our area is safe. The jobs are safe. Everybody's safe and happy because we're not going down the right path right now.
Thank you. And Mary.
Thank you. So I support regulations for high impact uses. And I believe that the port's role in these uses should be collaborative with the city of Tacoma. I fear what has happened was after 2016, when we lost the roles of the senior project managers for air quality and water quality, we lost that input. We don't have a Port of Tacoma employee that's responsible for air quality or water quality. So I imagine that the port has been very silent in these matters. And that is something I take issue with. And that is something that I intend to take action for as a scientist, because we absolutely must have representation and input, and we must work with the city so that we're all on the same path and that we're walking together towards the same goal and not finding out after the fact and disagreeing when we could have had the conversations earlier. So thank you.
All right, I think we probably have time for one, maybe two questions if you guys are fast. But another one from the audience. Local residents have been breathing toxic air from the port with refrigerant burns, metal fires, and cumulative air pollution. We want cleaner industry coming to the port to provide family living wage jobs. Give us an example of a cleaner industry you would recruit to the port. And let's start with Mary.
So an industry I would like to see at the port would be, and this is so big picture, I'm having a hard time just trying to even envision it, but it would be a floating dry dock to accommodate the new Ford class aircraft carrier that was launched 2 years ago out of Norfolk, Virginia. And that would be because we do not have any dry docks at any of our public shipyards to accommodate this new size vessel. So we have an opportunity to support our Navy, to create jobs that will last 3 to 5 years. And we can do it safely if we start now. So thank you.
Thank you. Mario, what would you recruit? What business would you recruit?
I would probably say more probably solar power. I see over the last 20 years, solar panels have shrunken. Solar panels have become, well, 20 years ago, let's think about it. Would you even think about putting a solar panel on top of your house in Washington? No. I think now the technology has moved so much further and so much better. I think we could definitely put that industry here to manufacture that and have it out there and getting power, use some of that shore power and maybe some of that electric power and the industry that's out there to grow the job market in there in our port. So that's just my thought process.
And Don?
My thought is that instead of the wind turbines being are coming through our ports and manufactured outside of the US, I would just as soon manufacture wind turbines and all of the associated components here in Tacoma. That would be my idea.
All right, I think we got time for one last question, and you guys have about a minute to answer it. The Port of Tacoma, like all industrial land, produces the most intensive sources of ongoing toxic contamination, not just legacy contamination. Juvenile salmon from the Puyallup River have the second highest concentration of toxics in the entire Puget Sound region. How would you use your role as port commissioner to reduce ongoing pollution that impacts the fish, the people that eat the fish, and the other animals that eat the fish? And I am going to start with Mario.
I would definitely want to know where it's coming from. I think that's probably the biggest thing, find out where it's coming from, what's happening and why it's happening. Clean it up and get it taken care of as soon as possible and find out how to prevent. Is it from carelessness? Is it from something that's old, that's been sitting there that no one's been looking at for decades? It's hard to know for sure until I don't know, because I'm not a commissioner, so I don't really know exactly where it's coming from and what's contributing to it completely. There's various different issues that would need to be arise, and I think we owe it to the Puyallup tribe and our local people, as well as my kids, to make sure they have the ability to go fishing right down there near the waterways. Why we have to worry about, can I eat this today? Nah, toss it back in. It's not just for sport. We also realize that that's one of their viable food sources as well as financial sources. I've bought plenty of fish from a lot of Puyallup tribe members. Why not? You know what I mean? So there's no reason why we can't get this fixed, and why not get it fixed ASAP and find out and prevent this from happening anymore, regardless of where it came from, how it came from. At this point, it needs to be fixed.
Thank you. Mary?
So I feel that the port has a responsibility to identify where these major sources of contamination are starting. So we're talking about point and non-point sources of pollution. So with that, bioaccumulation is real. So we've got the signs up that tell people, don't eat this, but you can't stop them. And when we're talking about the levels and the metals and the chemicals that are present in these organisms, and we're talking about lifetime effects. So we're not even talking just adults, but we're going back to the fry, back when they're little. We've got to control the contamination going to the waterways. I appreciate the idea of creating fish habitat, but that is putting the cart before the horse. If we do not stop the contamination from entering the waterways, the fish and their fry will be subjected to it, regardless of how generous our idea is or how grand the thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And Dawn, would you like to wrap up our last question of the night?
Yes, absolutely. Mario's right. Source control, clean it up. That's the solution. But the reality of the world that we live in is recontamination can come from a variety of sources, one of which is erodes. Think about it. One of the biggest issues I think we face in the cleanup of Commencement Bay are those items that we've spent millions of dollars cleaning up, only to be recontaminated by areas that aren't adequately treated. And stormwater is one of the single biggest issues, I think, from our roadways. And particularly, I'm concerned about the recontamination of the Foss waterway because of what drains flow into that particular facility. So Mario's right, source control, clean it up. But the other reality is, well, wait a minute, I don't want to see it recontaminated, because then that means we've spent money that was wasted. So it's not an easy conversation and a simple conversation, but source control is a priority. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. This has been great. I'm gonna give you guys literally 30 seconds to make your final, say what you want to say to the audience who's been so generous and offered so many great questions. And then I'm going to pass it to Marquise to wrap us up and be done. But it's been a pleasure to be your moderator today, and I really enjoyed getting to learn a little bit more about each one of you. And so we're going to start the way we began. So Mary, if you'd like to give your statement, I will give you the floor.
Well, thank you, Tanisha, and thank you for such a wonderful job moderating this evening. I truly appreciate it. So we have an opportunity to bring in a professional in order to tackle some of these problems that have existed for decades. And that is what I would like to bring to the Port of Tacoma. Is my environmental science background includes biological assessments, bioremediation, and a clear understanding of what our responsibilities are ecologically and environmentally. So I appreciate the opportunity to share with you what my goals are and my intentions are, and I hope to secure your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mario?
Well, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate the invite for this. It's been great. First time around, so this is a learning experience for me. I believe the reason why I've come here is to bring attention to the port and everything that goes on in it. And I want to be one of those cogs that's going to help push our community forward and bring knowledge to our port and remind people, the new people coming in, as well as the people who are here and have been here their whole lives, how important our port is and how vital they are to our community, and how we can make sure that we clean up our port and make sure that we are moving towards the future. Whether how bad it hurts, how long it's going to take, we have to rip the Band-Aid off, and we have to sometimes change up and bring new thought processes in. Somebody who hasn't been here, somebody who hasn't seen the things the same way, and learn some new things that probably hadn't thought about. So here I am. I'm here to ask for your vote, and I hope that you give me a chance to get out there and roll my sleeves up and do what needs to be done for our port. Thanks, and I appreciate you guys tonight.
Thank you. And Dawn.
Thank you to everyone that participated this evening, to the staff of Citizens for Healthy Bay, and to you as the moderator. I went on the website of Citizens for Healthy Bay and saw the video. And I think it was Brian that made the reference of where water meets land. It's a very sensitive, emotional place. And for me, it really resonated. And I will say also for me, it was the fact that that water, that Commencement Bay water, connects us to a global economy. As a person involved in trade, that's extremely important. But I think what's more important in today's environment and the recognition that it's also about global climate change. It isn't just about global connections for trade. It's about global climate change. I'm committed to recognize that as a priority. And I believe fundamentally long-term, that's how a good economy is going to flourish. Thank you so much for letting me be part of this. I would encourage and appreciate your vote for me, Don Meyer, position number 4. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you, everyone. And that wraps it up for me. I'm going to pass it back to Marquise.
Alrighty, thank you everybody so much. Yeah, I just want to say a huge shout out to all the folks who tuned in. We had about 20 tune in. We had another 20 or so on Facebook Live, so really appreciate it. I'm really quickly going to give everybody at home some information about the upcoming election. So I'm just going to screen share real quick and you'll be out of here in about 2 minutes. So just bear with me. Alrighty, so yes, so a lot of you should have gotten your ballots back. If you have not, maybe wait another day and then make sure that your ballot, everything, your info online is all accurate. We're going to drop a link in the chat and we'll add it to our Facebook page for y'all so that you can find your nearest ballot drop box. Our primary election is August 3rd. And so that's coming up in a couple weeks. So make sure you know what races are going on. Make sure you know the candidates. And then I have a plan to turn in your vote. I always plan a day of the week that I'm going to go drop off my ballot. That's my preference. You can mail it if you'd like. Just make sure if you mail it, you want to do it several days in advance. It generally be postmarked, so it should be safe regardless, but it's always good to do things early. So thank you so much. I want to thank everybody Facebook at home. We're going to turn off the Facebook Live just now. And yeah, thank you all so much. You can find this video on our Facebook. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.